Just a quick reaction video for this morning's day 14 morning's hearing, which was the questioning of Lindsey German, formerly of the SWP. She is currently a convener of Stop the War Coalition, but the questioning today related to her involvement as a Central Committee member of the Socialist Workers Party during the 1980s. We got shown a lot of reports from various undercover police officers who have infiltrated the SWP during that time period. A lot of the information, it was then just put to Lindsey and asked how true it was. We got a fair bit of the stuff that was talked about today. Kind of, I think maybe like kind of leads towards was a bit more hostile than than you'd kind of like. There's a lot of like there's reports of supposed violence by undercover police officers, by the SWP on demonstrations reported by undercover police officers. Lindsey did a good job of refuting that without like kind of getting too much into explain why they didn't condemn people tearing down a fence at Wapping or things like that. Yeah, there was the thing about there was a lot about kind of there was one particular bit where they were asked why did the SWP support the Tottenham Three, Joy Gardner, Brian Douglas and Stephen Lawrence, and what was in it for the SWP to support these groups. And so, well, this is the natural work of the left, to oppose injustice. And they weren't doing it to what they get out of it. I mean, it's kind of difficult for me as an anarchist. I've always been very critical of the SWP and the opportunistic nature of a lot of their campaigning. So, like, kind of questions about what was in it for you, the sort of thing that like someone from my political tradition would ask of SWP organisers quite often. But like, I mean, I think like it's quite different when they're being asked these questions in relation to the deployment of undercover police officer into their organisation. A lot about the sort of the way in which the SWP operated with supporting national demonstrations or ones that they organised themselves. There was, I mean, the questioning, I think, was we were taken to documents like the Brief Guide to Subversion in Great Britain. We were shown like one from 85 and one from 95. Showed how the changes in the membership of the SWP. There was questions. There was a particularly funny bit where David Barr asked, what would the SWP do if the Cold War had turned into a hot war? And she was like, well, we were against nuclear war. And he was like, well, if we could leave out nuclear Armageddon, what if it was conventional war, which is like a complete hypothetical that like obviously everyone knows was not been the case. The whole point of the Cold War was if it had gone hot, then we were facing nuclear Armageddon. But this was this weird sort of thought experiment that Barr wanted to do, which I think was kind of nonsensical, really. I found it funny anyway. There was a lot of kind of going through. There's a lot of these like pen portraits of leading members of the SWP that Stefan Scutt had written about Lindsey German herself and about others. Just put it to a like kind of there was bits in there about people being aggressive, about being mercurial, which Lindsey German, kind of rejected, saying she knew these people. This is not what they were like. There was one which was like referred to Chris Banbury as that he saw his role as like kind of was based on the martial efforts of Trotsky. She went, well, he wrote about history, and to which David Barr was like, well, did he want to lead the SWP on the streets and demonstrations like Trotsky had led the Red Army? To which she was like, well, like that was a ridiculous idea. That like Trotsky hadn't really been involved in leading street demonstrations before the Russian Revolution because he'd been abroad, and you had this weird situation where a KC is trying to argue with an expert on Trotsky history about what Trotsky did in terms of leading demonstrations. Barr was, looked remarkably out of his depth at that point, and quickly moved on to a break actually, but it was very timely on his behalf. We heard a lot about the Marxism conferences, the annual Marxism conferences, which were very well attended. Lindsey German points out these were like publicly open public events. Same with the national gatherings in Skegness; they were open public events. I mean, what's particularly like disturbing is that the Skegness was it was a family event, right? People brought their kids, and there's a lot of reporting on infants, which distasteful, incredibly distasteful, on behalf of the undercover police. There was. There was other sort of questions that were put to Lindsey German by David Barr about the role that the SWP played on like a CND demonstrations. There was like claims that the SWP had been involved in collecting and distributing missiles to be thrown at the police on a CND demonstration that happened after the bombing of Libya. She was like, that's not how the SWP organised. It just wouldn't have been the case. It was like that. Also, this demonstration was mostly peaceful. The occasional throwing of a placard at police by demonstrators didn't represent a sign that the SWP was organising anything at all, particularly there. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it, really. I think Lindsey German's doing a good job. She's giving very full answers to Barr's questions. I mean, like there's like the questioning often feels like it doesn't go particularly far. It's like, here's a report, here's something that was said. What's your reaction to that? How truthful do you think it was? Which only gives a limited opportunity for answer, but I think she's doing a very good job of what she is answering. We'll hear more this afternoon. Sorry, it's just me giving the reaction. Is that the crowds are down a bit today. We weren't initially meant to be meeting. Well, originally it was meant to be a day-to-day with someone else giving evidence, but that was scrapped a long time ago. Then it was put back in for a day because Lindsey was meant to be speaking on Monday before HN90 gave his evidence on Tuesday. So we've seen a lot of HN90's reports. And I guess the reactions that Lindsey was being asked for was partially so they could be put to HN90 originally, but that's not been the case. So, today it's just Lindsey today. She was initially only penciled in for an afternoon session, so I would imagine this afternoon won't go on that much longer, though it's hard to tell. Thanks for joining. I'll be back. I'll carry on doing live tweets during the hearing and another reaction video later on today. Hopefully, Paul Heron, Lindsey's solicitor, from the Public Interest Law Centre will join me for a reaction video later on, maybe even some other people. I'll try and keep it from being just me speaking because I think everybody hears enough of my voice. Cheers for joining. See you later.